Hello, everybody. Welcome back into the Walkthrough Game Day show here on Mountaineers Now. The show is brought to you by Country Roads Air Duct Cleaning. Take me home to comfort. That's Eugene, Napoleon. I'm Schuyler, Callihan. It's Halloween week. It's Happy Halloween. Today is actually the day of Halloween, the day we're recording this. But West Virginia getting a win over UCF. They're back in the win column. They snapped their two-game skid. Come back home. They face BYU this week. We're going to dive into that game here in just a bit. But first, we're going to talk UCF, the win over the Knights down in Orlando. We're going to talk some Big 12 football, some scores around the Big 12 this past week, where West Virginia sits in the updated Big 12 standings. And then, of course, we'll get into our game preview, Gene's Fire Me Up segment, and our picks for the week. So, Gene, let's go ahead and talk about last week just real quickly. We discussed it in detail on the postgame show, but West Virginia 41-28. They run for 286 yards and 5 touchdowns down there in Orlando. I know that had to make you pretty happy.
Absolutely. You already know. Whenever we get a win, I don't care where it's that we playing against. But when you're that dominant, like I said, I'm excited about it because there's a lot of good film to look at. I know some of the fans from some of the quotes I was seeing wasn't as excited as I thought they would have been with a win.
Yeah.
I think they're a little bit tired of thinking they don't want us to get too far ahead of ourselves because they're looking at a watered down schedule and they're looking at teams that West Virginia should beat. I guess I read one fan's quote and it was something to the effect of beat somebody that matter and then I'll care. It's pretty good.
I mean, it makes sense. Like, I understand the thought process behind it. I get where they're coming from. And to some extent, like, I agree. Like, it's hard to really get behind this team or Neil Brown until he does something significant, right? And it's hard to even really, truly put them in that Big 12 picture, which we'll touch on here in a second, when they've had a lighter schedule than others around the league and you beat UCF, who no one really cares about. They've yet to win a Big 12 game. You face another Big 12 newcomer this week who has kind of struggled here recently. So I get that. But at the same time, it's like, look, you're 5-3. A couple of those games earlier in the season against Texas Tech and TCU, those things could have went the other way. And this season could have been a horrendous mess. So you could look at it as the glass half full, be thankful that you are where you are, and feel good about the win. Because, look, if you went down to Orlando and lost to UCF, this is a whole different feeling that we're talking about around this team this week.
This is okay. I'm this guy. You can't have it both ways. All right.
You just got to be real about it.
Just be real about it, but also understand, I've said this many times in the past, it's hard to win at this level. I don't care who you're playing against. Mm-hmm. It's hard to get a freaking victory at this level. So if you go down, like you said, to Orlando, and you come back with a freaking loss, now you're screaming the freaking sky is falling.
Yeah.
So
it ain't falling right now.
Right. You get a win. For me, good teams or decent teams find a way to win no matter who they're playing, and they find a way to continue to remain competitive. So I'm on that side of the fence.
Yeah.
Right now, where we are at 5-3, I would rather be 5-3 than 3-5.
Could very well easily be 3-5.
Thank you. And that's my point. We could have easily been the opposite of that, 3-5, and then forget about it. So give me the 5-3, give me beating the teams that we're supposed to beat, and let's pull out one that we shouldn't have won, and then be competitive all the way through for the rest of these games, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, and again, UCF, they haven't won a game in Big 12 play yet, but they present challenges. Like, they're a decent football team. It just may not look like it with their record, but they gave Oklahoma a run for their money. They should have beat Baylor with their backup quarterback. I mean, they've been competitive for the most part. And we talked about it last week on the preview. They have speed all over the place, and that's a challenge. And we saw that. That was a challenge for West Virginia. They did not tackle well in that game. So they did win, but there's stuff that they have to work on and get cleaned up before they take on BYU this week, which is going to be an interesting matchup. So let's go ahead and take a look here around the Big 12 last week. Some other scores. Kansas knocking off Oklahoma 38-33. We're actually watching this one as we were taping the game day show last Saturday. What a finish that one was. I thought Oakland was going to find a way to pull it out as they always do, but that was not the case. Kansas gets their signature win, and for Lance Leipold, he continues to do great things down there in Lawrence. Kansas State, they absolutely poured it on Dana Holgorsen, 41-0 over Houston. Texas, 35-6 over BYU, this week's opponent, and Iowa State goes over to Waco and takes down the Baylor Bears 30-18. Baylor now on the season is 1-5 at home. Eugene, I mean that's just incredible to think that team, a team that won the Big 12 just a couple of years ago, is now 1-5 in their own building, and it's interesting. But and then the last one here, obviously Oklahoma State routing Cincinnati 45-13. So thoughts on some of those games last week before we take a peek at the standings?
Well, I would like to go back to the Houston game.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah. See, when you lose a game like that, in one sense, it's kind of frustrating because it's like, wait a minute, that's what we should have done to them. You understand? But on the other hand, it goes to show you just there's levels to this, and it goes to show you just how far away some of these teams really are in competing at this level consistently. It shows you that. Now, I'm not surprised that Cincinnati is struggling. Right. I'm not surprised that Houston got beat like that. I'm really not. What I am surprised with, to be honest with you, because they've been somewhat competitive. I don't know exactly what happened to Baylor. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a tricky one.
I'm surprised about that. I'm not sure if the transfer portal hit them that hard, because it hit everybody. You know, it hit everybody. So I'm not exactly sure what's going on with the culture of what's happening there, but it is interesting. I'm never at a loss for words or surprised at what's going on with Leipold and what he's doing at Kansas. He is doing an incredible job.
Dude, I mean, it's
ready
insane.
To play every time they take the freaking field, man. I love it. I really do.
The thing that I love about that whole situation is, you've really changed the narrative of your program. When before he got there, if your team lost to them, it was an embarrassment. It was the biggest joke around college football. It was all over social media. It was all over TV. You were the joke of the weekend if you lost to Kansas, Texas a couple of times. So that was the narrative, right? Lance Leipold comes in, changes that thing on a dime, and now it's not a joke. It's like, oh wow, okay, they did it again. They did it again. It's almost like you're waiting for their downfall or waiting for them to be humbled, and it's not happening. This team and this program has truly turned the corner. And again, this is kind of exactly what I've been talking about for several weeks, several years. Doesn't take this long to turn a program around, especially in today's era of college football. And if you look at Kansas, you look at West Virginia, you look at Kansas State with Chris Kleiman and the things that he's done there in Manhattan, right. Those are very comparable places because they're not getting 4- and 5-star talents. They're not in states that have a rich, talent pool in terms of the high school ranks. So, like, it's very comparable. But
I'm going to say this again, and people disagree all the time, and that's fine. You don't freaking need 4- and 5-star kids to be good. What you need is a great staff that knows how to develop talent. And if you get consistent 3 stars, an occasional 4-star, I hate that whole star crap system, whatever.
It's bullcrap.
What will happen is you will consistently win games. Mm-hmm. That's what will happen. And these programs that do that, they do it, and we've been saying this for the last few years. It's proof in the pudding. You just said Kansas State. Hell, I'll even go as far as to say Baylor. A few years ago when they won the big. You can't tell me from top to bottom that their roster was that much more impressive than ours.
It's hard to argue. It really is. So
it's very comparable.
Quick turnarounds are possible, West Virginia fans. But hey, look, you're in year 5. Neil Brown's got this thing 5-3. Maybe this is just it. Maybe this is the timing that he needed. We'll see. It'll all play itself out. But let's go ahead and take a look here at the standings. Boy, this is just an absolute mess. I mean, from top to about the middle of the pack, it is just a cluster of teams. You got four, Eugene, four teams tied for first place at 4-1, and that's Oklahoma, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and Texas. Actually, check that. Five teams. Kansas State also in there at 4-1. And then you have Kansas and West Virginia tied at 3-2. And if you take a look all the way down there at the bottom, Eugene, you got three of the four newcomers down there at the bottom. You get Houston 1-4, UCF and Cincinnati still searching for their first Big 12 win. And Eugene, I mean, you look at the top of this thing. Earlier in the season, I would have said there's no way in hell that Oklahoma State or Iowa State would be anywhere near the top of this conference, because Iowa State lost Ohio and they did not look good. Outside of that game, Ohio's actually a pretty good Group of 5 team, but still, like, that's a game they should be able to win. And then you look at Oklahoma State, they got crushed at home to South Alabama, but look what they've done since then. It's like this every year with Mike Gundy. He has a weird loss and he figures it out, and that team rips off 8, 9, 10 wins, and they're in the thick of everything. So despite West Virginia having 2 losses, one of which you could have had, again, with the Houston game, they're still kind of in the mix. If they win out, they've got a chance, but you've got to win out.
You have to win out, which I'm expecting them to do that. Yeah.
Are we?
Listen, I'm expecting them to get to 8 wins.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I 100% think that's reasonable.
I'm expecting that to happen. Now, whether it happens, that'll be laid out for another day, which will be another story. We will see.
Yeah.
We will see.
And look, I've had a hard time gauging this team all season long, as you well know, with my predictions on these games every single week. Yes. But maybe I know a little something or two about the Heisman frontrunners. So let's see who's got the better list of frontrunners here. We've got a little bit past the halfway point of the season here, and like Gene and I were talking before, we were trying to figure out our list. We're going to put 3 of our top guys on this list, but there's really not that alpha dog, right? There's not that Bryce Young out there, CJ Stroud. There's not those guys that are just truly separating themselves. But there's a lot of really good players. They haven't had the Heisman moment yet. Maybe that's going to happen here in November. That's typically when these things are won. Right. So we'll kind of alternate back and forth here. Actually, we'll list our whole thing at a time. That way we can keep it up here on the screen, so it's not too confusing. So I'll go first with Bo Nix is my front runner. The dude is completing passes at an insane rate. He's pushing 80%. This is Geno Smith-esque through that first half of the season in 2012 type numbers that he's putting up. Like, it is incredible. He's going to have the schedule. He's going to have the wins as long as they continue to win and they get to the Pac-12 championship. Bo Nix is going to be right there in the thick of things. Right now, he is probably my front runner. And there's going to be a lot of guys on this list that I'm leaving off. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, I'm leaving off Michael Penix. I'm leaving off the 2 guys that everybody probably thinks should be in this conversation and has been in this conversation from the start, and that's Caleb Williams and Drake May. I'm going to go a little bit different. I'm going to give some other people some love around here, Gene. That's what we do. So I'm going to go with 2 non-quarterbacks here. And I'm going to go with one guy who I think you may actually have on your list, so I'm going to get this guy out of the way first. And that is Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State, the wide receiver. In my opinion, he is the best player in the country. But how often do we see a non-quarterback win this award, right? It's very, very, very rare. So I think Harrison's done enough. I think he'll continue to put up good numbers. I just don't know that they're going to have the resume, I guess, for Ohio State. They're not going to put up huge numbers throughout the stretch, this back half of the season. So I don't know. If they lose to Michigan, if they lose a game here or there, it could hurt his chances. But the one guy that nobody's thinking about, that we all know too much about, okay? Here's my dark horse. Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State. And you're probably sitting here thinking, what in the heck is Schuyler drinking today?
Not at
Listen,
all.
this
Not at
guy,
all.
if you didn't know, and it should not surprise you, is the leading rusher in the country right now. He's got over 1,000 yards. He has a 3-game stretch going right now of like over 200 yards a game.
Game. Yeah.
The West Virginia game, where it seemed like he wasn't getting touched until 40 yards down the field, that was the least amount of yards he had in that stretch. That tells you how special that kid is. He's only getting better. Oklahoma State has seemed to have figured things out. Look, if they beat Oklahoma this weekend, there's a chance they could get to 10-2, like a legitimate chance, and they can play in the Big 12 championship game. If that stuff all happens, he is going to be in the mix.
Now, you know what's so funny? And why I was laughing earlier when we were going before we started picking out our players, right? So I had two. To be honest with you, he was one of them.
Ollie Gordon.
Yeah,
Okay.
because anytime you have a back of his caliber that can break a game wide open on a single carry, no matter where he is on the field. And again, don't get me wrong. I played against arguably the best running back to ever lace up a pair of shoes, who happened to have played at the same place, in Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
What made Barry so dangerous was, I didn't care where he could have been, in the bathroom and you gave him the football. He's a threat to go.
He's finding it out.
Yeah.
Finding a way out.
Gordon is a kid that has that same type of ability. He has that home run ability no matter where he is. That's dangerous. You can't bottle that. So he's dangerous every time he touches the ball. You got to respect that. And you're right. A 3-game stretch where you're averaging 220 something yards per game, that's kind of crazy. And the way that they're playing and the way Gundy has him playing and the way they're positioning with the schedule, he can probably have the rest of the season averaging close to 200 yards a game, which is not unlikely for him to do that. Okay. So he's on my list. And it's funny. And he too was my dark horse.
Okay, so that was the one that I didn't know that you would have on there. Okay, I thought Marvin was going to be on there, but and maybe he is, But I do want to say this real quick before we move off of Ollie. I just talked about having your Heisman moment, right? There hasn't been that guy that has had his moment yet to really kind of separate himself. Ollie Gordon's got his chance this week. So last time they're going to be playing Oklahoma for a long, long time. Everyone's going to have their eyes on this game. If they beat Oklahoma and he runs all over those Sooners, that's his Heisman moment. He's going to supplant himself in that mix.
It's going to it's going to catapult him on that list in a big, big way. If he has close to 200 yards, and they win, forget about it, because that will be the reason why they won. If he rushes for 180, 200 yards, a couple of touchdowns, forget about it. Yeah.
Right. in 5-6 weeks ago, no one even knew who he was.
Well, that's the beauty of it. Yep. Isn't that the beauty of it? So he's my dark horse. Now, my number one guy is a guy that you don't even have on your list, and it is Michael Penix. And the reason being, I told you prior to, it was a joy watching him when he first came on the college scene at Indiana as a freshman.
Yeah, he brought the Hoosiers to life.
Woo! I watched him light up everybody they played. And I'm like, this kid is special. So to see him go through all the adversity, the knee injuries and the surgeries, to come back and reinvent himself at Washington and putting up the numbers that he's putting up consistently. So without him, if you take him out of that lineup, I don't know if they win 3 games this year. I don't know if you find 3 wins if he's not the starting QB. So for me, that's kind of like, he is their best player on at any position, period. Take a kid like him and plug him into any offense. And that's, to me, that's like the dynamo, the effect that you have with a dynamite player, just a freaking next generation type talent. So and he may not, but that's my guy. And because I watched him for so long, and it's a beautiful thing. It's a great story to see him fight back from adversity, like I said, and come from Indiana to Washington. I'm loving it. Now, I do have Marvin Harrison Jr. on my list.
I was going to say.
I do. And the reason being, once again, you can't speak about his intangibles when it comes to if the ball is in his area and his catch radius, it's going to be caught. And it doesn't matter who they're playing against. He finds a way to make an unbelievable catch. He finds a way to move the chains. He finds a way to pick up. If they're struggling in any way, shape, or form, they go to him. He is the guy. So for me, it's a shame that he's probably not getting the type of love that he deserves, but he is a heck of a talent. I said it last year that this year was going to be a breakout year for him. And it's interesting to see, like I said, when they need a big play, who do they go to?
Marvin Harrison.
They're not handing it off. They're looking for their guy. He is the guy. So for me, that's who it is. It's Gordon, it's Penix, it's Harris, it's Harrison. That's the Harrison Jr. Those are my guys, and I already know I could have went with Drake May. I do have him on my list. Down at the I do have Jordan Travis, quarterback at Florida State, that people are now finally starting to talk about a little bit.
Rightfully
those
so.
are my guys.
Yeah, and
those are the guys
that's
I have written down.
I think before last week, even after Carolina lost to Virginia, I still had Drake May probably as the front runner because I kind of expected him to bounce back and just rip off a bunch of wins. But then you follow that up with another loss, and it's really hard to kind of stay in that Heisman mix when the losses start to pile up.
Right.
So we'll see. Maybe he finds his way back in the thick of things, but they've got a lot of work to do and a lot of things to figure out. So let us know who you think who has the better Heisman list, or just better yet, just let us know who you think is the Heisman front runner here at the week 10 mark of the college football season. Man, does that sound crazy to say? It seems like we just started this thing and boom. We just talked about Penn State like it was yesterday. And now here we are, week 10. Unbelievable. Heading into the month of November. So stay with us. We're going to be right back here after we take a quick break. We're going to do our West Virginia BYU preview, Gene's Fire Me Up segment, and our picks for the week here right after this word from Country Roads Air Duct Cleaning. Do you have dirty air ducts? Is your dryer vent plugged up? Well, odds are you probably don't know the answer to that question. Fortunately for you, we know a guy. Give Justin at Country Roads Air Duct Cleaning a call at 304-639-3395 for your free home evaluation. That's 304-639-3395. Country Roads Air Duct Cleaning. Take me home to comfort. West Virginia and BYU getting together for the second time ever here this Saturday. The first meeting comes back in that 2016 year where West Virginia won 10 games. If you remember that crazy thriller of a game that they had over in Landover, Maryland, at the home of the Washington now Commanders, 35-32, I believe, was the final score of that one, where the Taysom Hill led quarterback. My gosh, that seems so weird to even say. Taysom Hill. It feels like he's been in the NFL for 5 to 7 to 10 to 15 years. Like, it just seems like he's been in there forever. But when he was in college, it also felt like he was around forever. I don't know how the guy's still playing, Gene. I think he played when you were back at West Virginia in '88. Like, it seems like he's been around forever. But anyways, that crazy game. Rasul Douglas had the pick six in that one. Then they also had the tip balls, the interception at the end by Maurice Fleming to seal the deal. And interestingly enough, the head coach of that one for BYU, Kalani Sitake, who is still at BYU doing really good things. I don't know if you caught it, Eugene, but Kalani Sitake, did you see his press conference earlier this week?
I didn't. I missed it.
Well, for you and for those who didn't, we're going to go and slip this clip in here real quick. This is how you know that when you are the ever-changing game of college sports is really taking its full effect. You don't really know each other that well. How about this joke right here?
I like fans that care about their teams and have a lot of passion for it, and so I'm looking forward to hearing them all sing. It's going to be nice to hear them sing. Was it Country Roads, Take Me Home? That's a cool song, and I think there's a lot of really cool things about college football, and I'm glad that we get to go be in that environment.
So, Gene, what do you think about that?
Let me tell you something. I'm glad he doesn't know when they sing it because he's going to
Yeah,
find out when we sing Country Roads. That is hilarious.
it is.
That's
I mean,
hilarious.
that just goes to show you right there again. Like, there's so much change. There's so much unfamiliarity with all these programs. These teams, again, only met one time,
Right.
and that it's just funny. That's the things you're going to get with this new world of college athletics.
Did he forget?
What's that?
Did he forget when they sung it the last time we played?
That's a good point. That is a good point.
I guess he forgot.
Yeah, it was so good he wanted to hear it one more time. So maybe he gets his wish fulfilled on Saturday. So about those Cougars and Mountaineers, BYU's kind of struggling. If you look at the way they started the season, they were kind of surprising some people. Maybe not at the start of the year. They kind of took a little bit to get going. They only beat Sam Houston in their opener 14-0. That was kind of alarming at the moment. But Sam Houston's kind of proven over the season they've got a really good defense. They just can't score. Southern Utah, they took care of. Then it seemed to change the narrative a little bit when they went to Arkansas and won that game. But now Arkansas has not been that good. They're 2-6 or something like that. So from there on out, it's been struggle bus valley for BYU. They lose on the road to Kansas. They beat Cincinnati, which was it's Cincinnati. They played them at home. Nothing to write home about there. They get crushed by TCU by 33. They did beat Texas Tech at home, and then they get walloped by Texas last week. So it's a team that in Big 12 conference play has played well at home, terrible on the road. If that trend continues, I think you like your chances on Saturday.
I don't care where we play BYU.
BYU.
Doesn't matter.
BYU.
So I'm gonna save my piece for when I get into what I want to get into. It doesn't matter. Scholar, listen, dude. We have to take care of business with these first year in teams in the Big 12 conference, period. Period. And I respect, trust me, I told you before, out of all the teams that came in, the one I respected the most was BYU because looking back at the history of their they've always had a very solid program. They've always had really good players. All you gotta do is just go up and down the NFL rosters, and you'll find a BYU player on there. You know what I mean? That's doing more than well at the NFL level, which tells you they have a lot of good talent that's well developed, coming out of BYU over a course of a long period of time, not just recent years, a long period of time.
Absolutely.
So it tells you the kind of caliber of a program they are.
Yeah.
It ain't matter come Saturday night.
Yeah, it's again, you look at this one on paper and it just screams West Virginia. I mean, it really does. And even after the win at UCF, I probably felt like a lot of those fans that you were talking about earlier in the show, just like, it's a win. Let's see what they do when they face better competition. And the first thing I thought of with this BYU matchup is it's a really good test because they are a physical team. They've played challenging schedules throughout the years. They're not going to be someone that just lays down. You know what I mean? This is going to be a tough team to beat. And I thought, man, BYU is going to give West Virginia a run for their money. They very well could. And they may win the game. I don't know. We'll see my pick at the end. But when you start to look at them deeper on paper, this is a really, really bad team. When you look at it on paper, again, we've talked about this week after week. The paper doesn't prove anything. But when you look at them statistically, offensively, they are one of the worst, if not the worst, offenses in the Big 12. They only average 24.9 a game, only 300 yards total offense per game. West Virginia ran for 282 last week. That doesn't even count whatever else they did in the air. They're dead last in rushing with 81 yards a game, which is not good when you have Keaton Slovis, a quarterback who has not been particularly great. Obviously, the former Pitt quarterback who we saw last year. Third down conversion rate has been atrocious for them. They're 29%. I mean, that's just you're not going to win games when you're converting under 30% of third down conversions. But the interesting thing I think that really stands out to me is kind of their personnel at the skill positions. At running back, L.J. Martin, Aiden Robbins, they kind of split sometimes. Robbins is not really the guy he's averaging like 3 yards a carry. Martin's more their lead back, but they are big backs, 6'2", 205 and 6'3", 240. So if those guys get downhill and start finding some success, that's going to put a lot of wear and tear on that West Virginia front seven that has not tackled well over the last 2 weeks. Do you think they're going to want to tackle these two big kids? We'll find out. When you go to the receiver position, again, it's the size, it's the length, and they've got a ton of it. 6'4", 210 Chase Roberts, Darius Lassiter, 6'3", 205. And they got a tight end that is their third leading receiver, Isaac Rex, 6'6", 255. So that, to me, is where there's a little bit of a problem in terms of the matchups because, yes, again, on paper, they don't look good. But when you start diving into this and you look at the problems that they may present to this West Virginia defense, again, there's some concerns there because they haven't tackled well. They're at a huge size disadvantage on the perimeter. Offensively, I still think defense or West Virginia's defense should be able to keep this offense in check because they've seen Keaton Slovis before. They don't really have a true consistent rushing game, but
Right.
you just never know. So what's your thoughts on this side of the matchup?
Well, the good thing is, listen, paper doesn't win football games.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the day, when you look at it on paper, like you said, of course, they can potentially pose, some outside threats because of the size of their receivers. But here's the thing. I've always said this. It's hard for a quarterback to throw when he's on his back. So we have to apply pressure. And again, that could be a scheme thing. That can be the offensive line is not that good.
Yeah.
When you're when you're averaging, less than 2.5 to 3 yards a carry, obviously you're not going to sustain any type of running game. That part of it's not going to be a threat. So you're going to have to throw the ball. See that much of it when it comes to corralling and keeping their receivers in check. We just have to really get them to the ground when they do catch the ball. Number one, we have to stop the running game before they even get started. It can't be a business decision, meaning that back because they got big backs. No, we got to bring it to them. But I'm more interested in seeing, to be honest with you, I want to see our second level play well.
That's
and I'm
a
going to
big
tell you
key.
what, that's going to be because if your linebackers are doing what they're supposed to do, you should be able to control the flow of their receivers with your linebackers, meaning that those crossing routes, those, third and fours and second and eights, when you're trying to throw those short,
Mesh concepts and
those right. That has to be controlled in the middle of the field. That has to be controlled by your second level. See, so for me, I'm looking at it through that vantage point, and this is a game, Schuyler, where we should have 3 picks. Yeah,
you could.
This should be a 3-pick game because they're gonna have to throw the football.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what I was just about to say was when you don't have a run game like they do, again, 80 yards a game,
Right.
and you have, and again, if you're Keaton Slovis and you look out and you see Darius Lassiter and Chase Roberts and Isaac Rex, you see all these big, long guys, and you see on film how much West Virginia secondary can be vulnerable and stuff like that. It's going to Iden his wise a little bit. He's going to want to take some deep shots down the field. They're going to have to. That's the way they're going to have to be able to move the ball and score in this game is they're going to have to take some shots. So, yeah, the ball is going to be put in the air. And if you make plays like you did last week, you think you're going to be able to make some turnovers for sure. So going to the other side of this thing, BYU's defense, again, bottom of the league in a lot of categories. But the one that they do stand out pretty well, and actually 2 of them, is red zone defense and interceptions. They have 12 picks this year. So they may not be forcing a lot of punts, but they're getting some turnovers. So that is one thing that they've done well. But conversely, that's also the one thing that West Virginia has done well offensively. They've taken care of the football. Garrett Green has not put the ball in harm's way. He's made really good decisions, whether it be in the pass game or the run game. So I don't really think you really have to worry too much about the ball being intercepted as much, even though they are a decent secondary. It's more of a defense that likes to take its chances because they do give up a bunch of yards. Um, so when you look at this team, I think really on both sides, this is a group that plays really bad between the 20s. They let
Right.
on defense, they let teams move the ball down the field. And then when they get into the red zone, they shut things down. They're one of the best red zone defenses in the Big 12. Offensively, they cannot, for the life of them, move the ball. But when they do, they cash in. They are one of the better teams, again, in the red zone offense in the Big 12. So the key to me in this one is those red zone opportunities. Obviously, limiting their opportunities getting there, and then when they do, holding them to 3, and then West Virginia just continuing to pile it on them as much as humanly possible in the start. And that's the big thing that I think West Virginia kind of helped themselves with last week. They've really struggled to get going early in games. They came out guns a-blazing against UCF, and I think that really kind of carried over to their success throughout the rest of the game. Last thing I want to note here for the defense, maybe even a couple other notes here. They've got an experienced linebacking unit, Max Tooley, AJ. I'm going to screw this name up, and there's a lot of these names that are out there that are tough on this BYU roster. AJ Vongpachon. Those two guys are really leaders. They're experienced. I think they can present some challenges. The one guy you have to watch for on BYU, they really only have one playmaker, and it's this guy right here, defensive end Tyler Beatty, 37 tackles, 3.5 sacks, a couple of forced fumbles, 6 tackles for loss. If there's a guy that's going to get in the backfield, it's going to be him. The good thing is you've got Wyatt Milam, you've got Tomas Remack back on the left side. Doug Nestor, we don't know what his status is going to be like. It looks like he's going to be doubtful. And then the last thing I'll note here is the offensive line. You did note for BYU, it is not very good. It's kind of shaky, but they do have a first-round talent in their left tackle, Kingsley Suamatia. So he is one that's going to be that's going to protect the quarterback and give them some chances offensively. And then Will Farron, the kicker, 8 of 8 inside 40 yards. So pretty good special teams, at least in that aspect of it. So your keys for West Virginia's offense going up against BYU defense?
Honestly, listen, if you got a dominant defensive player, I'm running at him. That's always been my philosophy, even as a coach. I'm running at him. If he's a dominant defensive end, dominant defensive linebacker, dominant, linebacker, whatever, defensive lineman, we're going to run at him because I'm not letting you beat me with pursuit.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. So you have to show me that you're that good. So once again, my thing is the game plan shouldn't change that much from what we did last week. We're going to run the ball effectively. We're going to run it often. And I think if you do that, once again, you're going to control the clock. But I also think it takes a lot of pressure off of Green to have to come up and do some things that, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like we want him to throw the ball down the field past 30, 40 yards.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to do that, then you definitely have to control the line of scrimmage and the run game. Me personally, I'm going to take some shots this game. I'm going to regroup. That's the word right there. We're going to regroup. We're going to reorganize this thing. I want to take a few shots down the field. I think we can. And I know they got 12, 11, whatever picks. I get all of that. But I don't think personnel-wise, they're better than we are in our skill positions. You understand? So for me, I want to test that theory this week.
Yeah, and again, you found another weapon in your offense last week with Jaheim White.
Absolutely.
Man, we've been talking about this kid for a while, but he finally got his opportunity. I think it was like 9 carries, 85 yards, got a touchdown, should have had a second, was wiped off the board. So you've got some really interesting pieces in that backfield. The receivers, even though Devin Carter left a few catches out there, they're starting to come alive. Rodney Gallagher's starting to get more involved. So I think this offense is really in a good spot right now. It seems like they're finally clicking out. Since the bye week, the offense has been great. Defense, not so much. But again, when you look at the matchup, if you can get past the disadvantages in terms of the size and the length and stuff like that, which that doesn't always mean anything, but if you get past that and you execute, you like your chances in this one. So let's go ahead and get into your Fire Me Up segment, Gene. So fire us up for this weekend's game against BYU.
Listen, again, BYU. I'm not interested in what they have to. First off, when you got the head coach talking about, he really likes country roads. He can't wait to hear it again. But you're going to hear it again. Oh, you're going to hear it again. And I'm looking forward to hearing it myself, right? The funny thing about a game like this, you have a team coming in that should be well respected. They have a pedigree to be well respected, but I'm not too sure if they really understand where they're coming. I don't get it. Because if you listen to the head coach who don't know when cue me up country roads, then that means the players are different. In their head, they don't know what's going on either. That's a beautiful place to be right now. Your head coach will know what he's doing. Your players don't know what they're doing. Hell, I hope they fly into the right place. Don't fly into Pittsburgh. Let's be from it. So for me, this is a great opportunity for the Mountaineers to come and do what they normally would do at home. We got to protect our home, first off. I don't like to say we lose at home. We don't lose at home. So let the Cougars bring their ass into Morgantown. Let them leave with cue up, obviously, country roads. And I'm hoping the coach has a big smile on his face when they're playing it. Then he might remember, oh, snap. They're playing it when they win games. Oh, man. He might look at his team and say, I'm sorry, fellas. I got it all wrong. I don't really like country roads right now because they're playing it because they just kicked our ass. You know what I mean? So I'm hoping everybody get that realization at the same time. Could you imagine when they look up at the scoreboard and we win by 3 touchdowns and the head coach, the rest of the staff, freaking cheerleading group, the band, and all the players at the same time in unison do this? All at the scoreboard, and they're hearing country roads. I can't wait to see what that looks like. And I hope ESPN, they take the clip that we just played and they play that clip side by side with all of them in unison at the scoreboard, Schuyler, as they're playing country roads.
That would be fun.
We will win this football game by at least 10, 17, should be 3 touchdowns. Honestly, it should be a 3-score game, honestly. They have no business coming into the Big 12, coming to Morgantown, West Virginia, and getting a win when they've been struggling the whole damn season. I'm not even thinking about us losing this game. They are going to make us bowl eligible. Thank you, BYU. We appreciate you. Let's go, Mountaineers.
BYU, I love it. So let's go ahead and transition into, I don't even know how you follow that up, but we'll try and make it work. So let's go ahead and transition here into our weekly pick'ems. And Gene, yes, we don't have to remind everybody you went freaking 5-0 last week, but we're going to do it anyways. But 5-0 for you last week. I was 2-3. It's been a struggle for your boy. So you're 22-18. My record is the opposite of that, 18-22. So to me, it feels like this is championship week. This feels like this is my opportunity to either get back in it or absolutely watch you from the basement from the rest of the way out. So let's go ahead and dive in here. There's a lot of Big 12 matchups in this one. Let's go ahead and start with number 25, Kansas State at number 7, Texas, noon on Fox. No Quinn Ewers in this game. They're going to start Malik Murphy again. As much as I really like this Kansas State team, and I think they can win this game, I got to go with Texas, and I don't know why. I feel like it tripped me up last week when I said I went with Utah over Oregon, and I knew in the back of my head I should have went Oregon. This is kind of the same feeling where I'd want to go Kansas State, but I'm just going to go with Texas here because I think that's the better play. So I'm going to go hook 'em horns over Kansas State.
And I think you're doing it right because I'm doing the same thing. I think brand-wise, we're not talking about just the brand between Kansas State and Texas, but we're talking about top-to-bottom talent, and I think Texas simply has a better roster. So It's a logical thought. They should win this game. I'm going Texas.
Bedlam for the last time in Lord knows how long. Number 10 Oklahoma at Oklahoma State, 3:30 3:30 on ABC, not ESPN. But look, Oklahoma State, they have turned the corner like we mentioned earlier in the show. They got Ollie Gordon, who's again, one of my dark horse Heisman favorites. I like their chances in this one. I really do. I just don't see Oklahoma losing back-to-back games. I think they're going to find a way to win this one. It's going to be ugly. I think Oklahoma State may even lead for most of the game. And again, probably want to go with Oklahoma State, but I'm going to keep going against my gut here because obviously my gut has not worked in the past. So I'm going to go Oklahoma.
And that's the reason why you are where you are.
No, you're going to go with the Pokes?
Oklahoma State will win this game.
Oh, man.
I'll tell you right now, Gordon is going to have probably north of 160, and he's going to be the reason why they beat the Sooners. Let's go Cowboys.
Right. And that's why I am where I am. So, number 5, I'm almost worried and sick to my stomach anytime you disagree with me now because, anyways. Number 5, Washington at number 24, USC 7:30 on ABC. Big one here in the Pac-12 for both parties. Caleb Williams, if he wants a chance to repeat as a Heisman winner, he's got to win this game. If USC wants to do anything special this year, they have to win this game. Washington, on the other hand, they've got bigger things in mind. College football playoff, and for Michael Penix, we already talked about that, the Heisman. I just can't get there with Washington. They're a really good football team. Winning on the road is tough, even if it is at USC. Caleb Williams, I just don't think he's going to lose 3 games this early in the season. So I'm going to go USC, but these are tough games this week.
These are tough games, but I agree with you. I'm going with USC. I don't see them losing 3 games in a row, and I don't see him not playing well in this game. He understands. He's a kid that has a lot of moxie with him. He knows how good Penix is, and he wants to showcase talent for talent. And I think he's going to play his butt off to win this game. So, I think you're safe here. You're good. It's a good pick.
LSU at Alabama, 13 versus 18, 7:45 on CBS. Alabama's not quite what they were here in recent years. The offensive line's a mess. They really don't have great quarterback play. They're not as dominant as they used to be. But when you got a home game here and a rivalry game against LSU, I think they'll find some answers. Whether it's in the passing game with Jalen Milroe or their defense just shows up and plays lights out. I'm going Roll Tide. I mean, look, Nick Saban, his record at home, his record against LSU is pretty good. So I'm going to go with the Crimson Tide here.
I was getting ready to say, man, don't even make it harder than what it needs to be. You already know Roll Tide, man. Roll Tide.
And so now for the game that you are all here for, West Virginia and BYU. It's the second time these folks have faced off against one another. And as we mentioned earlier in the show, Kalani Sitake, he wants to hear that country roads take me home to the place. He might hear it. West Virginia BYU coming up 7 o'clock on FS1. Here's a few thoughts from the head coach.
I'm glad to be back home. We need to redeem ourselves after the fourth quarter versus Oklahoma State, and looking forward to getting in the front of their home fans. It's a true blue game. It's military appreciation. Very proud program. You know, our fans really need to show up and be loud. We need their support here. BYU is a national brand. They travel well wherever they go. I think this is their only real East Coast game of the year, so sure there'll be a lot of their fans here.
Neil does a great job coaching his guys, and you can see his background is on the offensive side, and so they're very explosive offensively. They could do so many things to you, and I think that's his background as an offensive guru, being a coordinator at the highest level, and then also being a head coach. I think he's establishing their identity on the field, and you can see that they can punish you in so many different ways. Really balanced team. They have a passionate fan base, loves their team, and I know from talking to a lot of different people, been out there, it's a hard place to play.
All right, West Virginia, BYU. Let's see, Gene. I have been the hex for this game for seemingly a month and a half or so. I go West Virginia, they lose. I go against West Virginia, they win. What do you guys want me to do? You want me to pick BYU? Because I'll go BYU. I know where I believe the winner in this game, or who the winner in this game is going to be. I don't know if I can do it though. I really don't, because I'm a little nervous. I feel like I'm the Hex at this point. So I think I'm gonna go with
this guy. Oh, this guy.
nope. Not quite, my friend. Give me the Mountaineers, baby. West Virginia wins this one 41-23. Garrett Green has another 300-yard day all-purpose, and the Mountaineers go to 6-3. They get to bowl eligibility, and we are off and running. Mountaineers. And
You already know. You already know. You see where I'm at with it. You already know. Let's go Mountaineers. BYU.
BYU. And I can't even see in this dang thing. It's like the kid from the Little Giants in this. He's got his helmet like this.
I love it. I love it.
So for Eugene, Napoleon, I'm Schuyler Callihan, or the kid from the Little Giants. We thank you for watching the Walkthrough Game Day show presented by Country Roads Air Duct Cleaning. You can catch us back here on Saturday night as we will recap the game against the Cougars on the Mountaineers Now post-game show. So thank you guys for watching. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube at Mountaineers Now, and we'll see you back here on Saturday. Take care.
Country Roads.